My lawyer told me that I had made about 7 or 8 million since I joined up with Warner Brothers in 1934. He said, "Look, if you want to face the facts of life, you're insolvent. In fact, you're lucky you haven't been put into bankruptcy." What will happen if I go bankrupt? If you go bankrupt, you may be able to pay 10 cents on the dollar or something like that. I thought it over. Somehow the thought of what my father would think entered my mind. I said no. Going bankrupt was a form of welching, and that I'd have to try to work to pay up in full, although how long that would take me, God knows. He threw up his hands. I had a vision of going back to where I came from, Tasmania, New Guinea, in ball and chain, like a convict. The long sheet Judd had before him looked like the financial page of the New York Times. It also looked like a miniature of the national debt. It looks like I have to go on working for the rest of my life to pay off. I thought for a while. No, I said at last. I won't even consider bankruptcy. I went to 21 that day for lunch. It is a habit of mine. When you are down and out, go to the best spots. At the club, a fellow named Ben Finney, a playboy of sorts, called across the room. "Hey, Princey." That's another of my nicknames from The Prince and the Pauper. "Come over here. What are you doing for lunch?" As nonchalantly as possible, I said, "No, old boy, be my guest. When flat, put on the old front. You know." We had a half-hearted fight about it. I started with a couple of Jack Ross beforehand. I worked up in my usual style to grouse freshly flown from Scotland, a bottle of Moselle 21, fine vintage. I felt the gloom lifting. What did he want to talk to me about? He had read in the papers, of course, that I was broke. "Have you got that Gauguin painting, Au bord de la mer?" he asked. All of a sudden, daylight. "You want to sell it?" he went on. I remembered that Judd had put it in the storage, but I didn't know where. It was mortgaged, but for less than full value. But to part with it, the thought hurt. It was a work of art that somehow didn't count in the mundane field of assets, something that belonged to my heart, my ego, the inner self, for I had long been interested in great paintings. "I've got a buyer who will pay you $75,000 cash for it tomorrow." I could feel my palms tingling. "Sorry, old boy. As I love you, I couldn't consider it. You know it's one of the world's masterpieces." He said, "This is a firm offer. He's got to have this painting. I've got to have my commission. How much?" "Well, it's not worth discussing. The price is ridiculous." 75 grand? A deal like that would solve every immediate problem. I wouldn't consider it under 110,000, and I'd be reluctant at that. The day following, I closed the deal to sell my Gauguin. My pride and joy, one of Gauguin's finest. It depicted the simplicity of the South Seas. There was a simple man holding the hand of a little boy. But paintings seem to be just loaned to you. The longest you can have a painting is your own lifetime. You stop, but the painting goes on, if it is one that is worth going on. It was one of the few possessions I really loved. I could stay in front of it, of an evening, especially when alone, and admire it and get a deep, tearful feeling from it. All of a sudden, I was cash ahead, after paying $10,000 commission and the money due on the mortgage. I didn't go to 21 again. Too expensive. I ran to Judd's office. "Judd, I got this money. How shall I allocate it? Nobody knows I got it, but for God's sakes, don't leave me with an old hat and a tin cup." "Don't be too nervous," he said. "Have you forgotten you have a Van Gogh? I can put that up tomorrow and get you another 150,000. I was shocked. I hadn't included that in my thinking. "Oh no, if that goes..." I still have the Van Gogh as of this writing. I paid off a regiment of little debts that I had run up, that my wife or ex-wives had run up. A bit here, a bit there. Debts which I thought had been paid off by Al Bloom. With a few $1,000s as a grubstake, I went to England to make some pictures, to start up again. But when your luck starts running out, it keeps running out. During the rest of 1952, I made 2 pictures in England, horrible flops. I was tired, and it seemed as though my fate and fortunes were running low. The great debts in the United States hovered over me. My lawyer relayed to me the size and proportion of the pressures upon him for me to fork over money that I didn't have and didn't know where to get. "Ah, screw 'em all," I said. "Let 'em chase me around the world." For the next 3 years I did little but live on my schooner, the Zacca, at Palma de Majorca in Spain. The only real wives I ever had have been my sailing ships. The only real wives I have ever had have been my sailing ships. Up front, on the prow of Zacca, there was painted, appropriately, a rooster, a crowing cock. I sailed the Zacca, went skin diving, took in the bullfights, tried to live a domestic life with Patrice, and I diapered my lovely little daughter, Arnella. Years before, I had begun drinking steadily, daily, about 1/5 of vodka a day, maybe more. Now I extended and deepened this recreation. Why didn't I tire of it? Why did most other things pall on me, but vodka never? Intermittently, I played around with the celebrity set at the cosmopolitan centers, or 1 or 2 came to visit me on the Zacca. I had an occasional brawl in a bar. They were getting less frequent now, and I generally lived the life of a guy who was all washed up. I believed I was washed up, finished. I had a little kit that I carried around. It was about the size of a medical kit. On it were the words, "Flynn Enterprises." Only I knew that inside of it was a tidy bar with a bottle of vodka, 2 or 3 glasses, and a bottle or 2 of quinine water. I had acquired a Bible at last, and I carted it around with me. When I went alone or called on the beach to see someone, I had my little briefcase along. I was going to get security somewhere, somehow, out of something. There I was in 1953, 54, and 55, and into 56, Flynn Enterprises, moving about Majorca and the south of France, kit in hand, asking myself, how did this happen? What are you doing? Who are you? How can a man live to his 46th or 7th year and then begin to ask himself questions? Who am I? What am I doing with this medical kit at my side? Where am I going? Is this the way a man should wind up? Except for the few who are close to me, or dependent upon my alimony or support from me, I was now, in the mid-1950s, to the general community a pretty much forgotten man. No pictures were coming out. None in recent years had been sensational successes. So what? I had my own resources. One thing I always knew how to do: enjoy life. If I have any genius, it is for a genius for living. I spent myself to the full, dissipating all that I wanted to, testing how much my constitution could stand, bending where others might break. What the hell's the use, I thought. I can't pay off my indebtedness. I can't go back to America. I can't ride horses like I used to. I'm tired of swinging a sword. Let's drink and go skin diving. Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll go down 100 feet someday and not come up. I was full up with the whole act of living. Twice in my life, I'd been close to suicide. Now I was just living, drifting. I went around with a stubble beard and didn't give a damn. Sitting around on the Zacca in shorts, I had plenty of time to contemplate. I had by now made about 45 pictures. But what had I become? I knew all too well. A phallic symbol. All over the world I was. As a name and personality, equated with sex. playboy of the Western world. That was me. But what had I set out to become a long time before, when I was young and the world opened to me? How far afield had I gone from my early ambitions? Does any man ever set out to become a phallic symbol universally, or does this not rather happen to a man in spite of himself? The old bromide came back to me. How some were born to greatness, some achieved it, and others had it thrust upon them. I had no greatness, only a deadly fear of mediocrity. But time had set upon me this strange stamp of lady killer par excellence. How did this happen? I had my pals, King Farouk, Ali Khan, Prince Rainier, any motion picture pals who might be going my way, such as Orson Welles, Rita Hayworth, and social registrites from the bored Newport at Long Island set. They came and went. I met them at the gambling casinos in southern France. We had drinks and fun. I drifted. He's broke, they said. They were right. He's washed up, they said. They were right. Flynn is done. In like Flynn? That's a laugh. Out like Flynn? So in like Flynn? That's a laugh. Out like Flynn. So to hell with it. Just open the medical kit. Take a drink. Go for a swim. Diaper Arnella. I tried to stay interested in my wife, but that was hard. It is hard for me to stay interested in any one woman in the world for very long, no matter how fine she is. Patrice was and is fine, but I got bored. I opened my kit, another fifth. Boy, bring me some light saturine. I want to clean my teeth. I laughed. My friends laughed. I had pals. They had yachts. We dined on their yachts and they dined on ours. Months and years drifting, down and out professionally. But I got my kicks. I got older. I heard them say wherever I went, like Ava Gardner said, "Look at Errol. Look at him." When he was young, he was the best looking thing I ever saw. Ava didn't mean it unkindly. We were good friends long ago when she was sweet 18 and the world didn't know her talents and resources. I was without faith, full of regret that I could not believe in God. I was upset with people who said to me, "What? You don't believe? You don't have faith? Well, if you don't have it, you just don't know." In a very upsetting, smart alecky tone that many people have. They give it to you in a very superior way. They are in touch with God. You are not. If you don't know, old man, it's your tough luck. I doubt these people. Maybe they don't look at life hard enough and deeply enough. Maybe they let barriers down at a certain point and don't resist, and they let something rush in that they call God. I'm too hard-headed for that. I've been in rebellion against God and government ever since I can remember. As a result, I am tormented as if I have been missing something that others have. You can have fame, fortune, be an international character, and wonder whether some little guy who has faith has something bigger than anything you ever have had. But I had my vodka, and I had faith in that. It came in cases. I got up in the morning and retched. I hawked, coughed around a while, took another drink, started the day. 4.5 years, I was on the bum. Rumors were going around, though I didn't know of them then, that I was sick to death, that I had broken my back, that I was drunk and in the gutter, and that I didn't want to work. In spite of this reputation for disaster, somebody remembered me. Sam Jaffe, a Hollywood agent, came to Palma de Mallorca and asked me why I didn't want to work. "What's going to happen to you?" he asked. "You're living like a beachcomber." "I'm having a good time. I'm not working, and I'm enjoying it." I'd been a beachcomber once before, I told him, and it looked like I was going to stick to it. He shook his head. I was playing for time and position. I really wanted to get back to work. A series of cables went back and forth. I learned that I was wanted for a picture to be called Istanbul. I thought the film was to be made in Turkey, but it turned out I must go back to Hollywood. In the States, people who saw me again on the screen said I looked dissipated. Great! I was tired of being called beautiful, as they had called me when I was younger. I followed Istanbul with some television work. Then came a series of pictures, and I was back in the public eye again. The first break came when Darryl F. Zanuck, whom I hardly knew then, for some obscure reason he has never explained to me, thought of me for a juicy part in his. The first break came when Darryl F. Zanuck, who I hardly knew then, for some obscure reason he has never explained to me, thought of me for a juicy part in his The Sun Also Rises, and all the critics were unanimously very kind for once. Then, of all people, Jack Warner. Remember, I was going to teach him how to make pictures? My old friend and antagonist decided I was right for the role of John Barrymore in Too Much Too Soon, and again the critics leaped into the breach for me, saying I made a good Barrymore, and I was welcomed home. Then came Roots of Heaven, another one for Darryl. In all of these, I played a drunk and a bum, what people believed I was and had become. Maybe those roles were right for me. I was a natural, I guess, a bum, a rake, a character. Yet apparently, all the world loves a comeback. The magazines began talking about me again. Hollywood is more like its old self, they said. Flynn's in again. They called it a comeback. And they said my new earnings were helping me to pay off my huge debts. That was true. I wanted to owe nobody anything. More recently, I produced, as an interesting side venture, a thing called Cuban Rebel Girl. I spent my days with Fidel just before the Batistans quit. I spent my days with Fidel just before the Batistans quit. All that is familiar and brings the story up to date and to what seems more or less known about my whereabouts in recent years. And yet, what do the people know about me? Nothing. The wives I have had, the mistresses I have kept, the pictures I've made, the brawls I've been in, the bounces I've taken, my made and lost fortunes, my wicked ways. These are not me. How I could not live and behave that these things were really me. Who could live with himself believing himself to be a symbol of sex and nothing more? What makes anyone think that I am less concerned for what makes anyone think that I am less concerned for the verities of the world than anyone else? Was it all a prank that I went to loyalist Spain, that I sided with Castro, that I've plumbed the sea depths and traveled the world? The search for sensations has played a great part in my life, but there have been other guests. There have been other quests. There is no use telling a story arse backwards. Better begin where it all begins, in the womb, except where, as in my unique case, it so often ends.